Hello there. Welcome to the Maker Manager Money Podcast, a podcast to inspire entrepreneurs to keep going and entrepreneurs to just start. My name is Kyle Knowles, and today's guest is Greg Shove, CEO of Section, founder of Machine and Partners, and co-founder of Personal Math. Greg brings over 30 years of entrepreneurial experience and offers invaluable insights into building businesses that thrive, even in the face of setbacks. We dive deep into his journey, the myths of Silicon Valley, and the hard-earned lessons of persistence. Greg also shares his expertise on the transformative power of AI, from leveraging tools like ChatGPT and Claude to streamline workflows, to the role of AI in education and the workplace. Greg provides a roadmap for how entrepreneurs can harness this game-changing technology. Whether you're new to AI or looking to stay ahead of the curve, this episode is packed with actionable advice. Welcome to the show, Greg. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for inviting me. I'm glad to be here.
And where are you dialing in from?
Menlo Park, California, so south of San Francisco, the heart of the AI gold rush, I think.
It is. You're in the right place at the right time, for sure.
Yeah, I think so.
So, Greg, since it's end of the year, we're heading into next year. What's your biggest goal for 2025?
Oh, man. Talk about starting with the heavy one. Okay. Lots, I guess. Stay cancer-free. Spend time with my grandkids. We have 2 grandkids that turned up in 2024, so spend some time with them in 2025. Ride this AI wave for all the businesses that I'm involved in. There's 2 primarily. Of course, Section, where I'm full-time CEO. And then I started, but I'm not involved with every day, a company called Machine and Partners. And we're building AI apps for others, helping other companies build their AI applications. So, for those 2 businesses, I just want to help steer them or, keep them in the wave, I guess, or keep them on the wave and find growth, find capital efficient growth, maybe even some profitability, right? That'd be a good thing.
That's always a good thing for business, isn't it?
Yeah. Hard to find maybe in AI, but I think we'll get there.
Yeah, for sure. And those are awesome goals. Congratulations on your grandchildren. You said you have 2. Are these your first 2 or?
Yeah, first 2. We have 2 kids, who are twins themselves. They live in the city in San Francisco, so they're nearby, which is great for us. And they each had a baby boy about 7-8 months ago.
Okay, that's awesome. So you have 2 twin daughters.
Boy, girl twins, and then we have a 23-year-old kid that's son that's in New York, in one of those typical hard tech sales jobs. When you email and call thousands of people and no one answers.
Okay. So he's learning a lot of life lessons.
He's learning a lot of life lessons. It's exactly. So, bottom rung of the tech industry, right? An SDR for a software company, not easy.
Yeah, for sure. And that's, you got to start somewhere, and getting used to rejection is really good for those life lessons right there.
Absolutely.
You've been through a lot. I mean, I see in your LinkedIn profile, you were a tech executive at AOL. So you were at the early wave of the internet. Now you're heading up Section as CEO, and then you've got Machine and Partners as an AI company that you helped found and you're a partner in, and you're doing Personal Math with, I believe Taylor is the COO.
She's the COO. Yeah, she's an amazing kind of compliment to me, operator, young executive. Really kind of has accelerated fast in terms of her career, and I tapped her as our COO about a year ago. So that was a good call. So she and I write Personal Math, which is basically advice for other operators who are in the thick of it, trying to advance their careers or advance their companies or their teams.
Okay, and so that's a lot. That's a storied career, maybe in tech, really, always in tech. And you also founded a company that you were at for 12 years or so.
My last company, I was there for about 12 years. The company's probably now 16 years old, maybe longer. It was a battle. Listen, I've had a more typical Silicon Valley career. Everybody thinks, or the mythology of Silicon Valley is start a company, 4 guys and a dog, and then get acquired for $1 billion 5 years later or something like that. That happens once in a while. That's the exception, not the rule. The rule is more like my career, which was just hard work, right? A lot of persistence, a lot of failure, some success. The rocket ship is usually more like a roller coaster. And so over 30 plus years, I've had more Rollercoaster than Rocketship, but a couple good outcomes in terms of company exits. My last company was sold for $150 million. It's probably worth 2 or 3 times that now. It's owned by private equity. It's an enterprise software company, but it just took a long, long time to build it. Long time, multiple pivots, and we burned too much capital. Made a bunch of mistakes. Eventually figured it out. Found product market fit. Now that company's doing over $100 million a year in revenue. Section will break $10 million in revenue soon, annual revenue, and I think Section will be a long-term, very viable, profitable, valuable business. It just always takes longer, Kyle. It's always harder.
Yeah.
There's always more kind of grief and disappointment along the way. Just the hard realities of trying to build companies, especially new ones, right? New products or new markets or new ideas. You just have no idea. Is the product going to work? And then will customers buy it in some sort of repeatable way? As I say to every entrepreneur, it's pretty easy to get 10 customers. Like if you're an entrepreneur and you can't get 10 customers, or maybe even 50 or 100, depending on if it's consumer business or enterprise business. When I think about enterprise businesses, any good founder should be able to get 10 customers. They've got friends, they've got family, they've got networks, they've got, classmates, whatever. They can find a way to hustle to 10, maybe 20, 30 customers. But, to get to 100 enterprise customers and then to 1,000, that means you've got product market fit. It's hard to find. And it's where most companies basically fail. So, listen, my career has been, I'd say, more typical, which is, nothing that landed me, a unicorn, but a rewarding career with some good upside and some pretty miserable moments.
I bet. And I love that analogy of a roller coaster, not a rocket ship. I mean, I think people just AI, ChatGPT is good at this. Anytime you talk about startups or anything, it will include the rocket ship for sure as a emoji. In the generative text that it creates. But I think it should show roller coaster more often, because I don't think there are enough people that will take a chance on entrepreneurship because they think it's got to be this one and done big deal. I mean, you have to grind it out. And the entrepreneurs I've talked to, that's all it's been, is a grind. It's not just overnight success. It's overnight success after several years of hardship.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think we set the bar too high for yourselves. And I think that keeps people, as what you said, keeps people on the sidelines. I think they hesitate because they think they should have something inside of them that's going to be amazing. It's going to be a rocket ship. It's going to be a unicorn or something like that, or they'll become millionaires, or whatever the metric is. And it's just it's too much pressure, and the expectations don't need to be so high. How about make a good living? How about start a company that doesn't kill you? That makes a good living for you. I think that's probably the right measure. And doing something not necessarily that you love. I don't think you have to love what you're doing every day as an entrepreneur. I think you have to care about it enough. Someone described to me, what you're looking for is a problem that really frustrates you, so you don't like seeing the problem, but it also sort of interests you enough that you want to solve it. You need both of those sort of states, if you will, at the same time to give you the motivation that will power you through those moments where you got to figure it out, where it's tough, where you might be running low on capital, or when customers churn, all those things that you kind of bump into as an entrepreneur. You need to be able to power through it. And if you're just focused on the outcome and a big outcome, I think that's both distracting and in a way demotivating, because your expectations are too high. And instead, sort of dial those expectations back. Keep the ambition high, keep the expectations a little more moderate, I think, is the way to think about it. And then as you get those wins, they'll pile up. It takes time, but those, they'll begin to kind of accumulate.
So what are your thoughts on the whole tech bro hustle culture of, tech startup? Does it have to be that way? Does it have to be 80-hour weeks? Can you have a family? Can you enjoy your life and take care of your mental health and your physical health?
I think it depends on what you're trying to do, what you're trying to build, and at what scale. I think it's a grind, and it can be all consuming. And I think for many ideas and ventures, it will need to be that way. If you really want to tackle a tough problem or a competitive market, or a product that hasn't been invented before, or a business model, or a marketing sort of model that hasn't been tried before, you should expect this to be long hours, and not just hours, but sort of mentally and emotionally exhausting or consuming. I think that is appropriate. You're trying to build something that doesn't exist, and if you're trying to build something in a way that will stand the test of time, really find product market fit, really keep customers happy, That's not easy. And I would expect it to be distracting. I would expect you to be tempted to pick up your phone while you might be at a family dinner. I'm not saying that's good. I'm not saying that's the behavior you should be aiming for, but this problem should be in moments should be so consuming to you, so interesting to you that, you might want to pick up your phone and check that Slack message. I certainly have. I'm not proud of it, so to speak, when, in these moments where I should be more present with my family, but these ideas or these challenges get inside you and stuck inside your head, and you want to work it, and you want to see if you can find the solution. So not 24/7, not 7 days a week, not for years at a time. You obviously are going to burn out, but I would expect for some challenges and some businesses, they're going to be all consuming. For others, if you can moderate some of your expectations, moderate your income expectations, perhaps. Maybe you don't have venture capital, which is probably a good thing. By and large, I think most businesses don't need venture capital and probably shouldn't raise venture capital, even though they do. But if you can manage your expectations and manage your sort of financial outcomes, then you could probably manage your time and manage that balance a little better. But it's a I don't know if it's a hustle, but it's a grind, and it should be at some level consuming a good amount of your energy.
I want to go back to, so you've had this storied, tech career. I don't know if storied is too big, if you're going to call it.
I'm not sure it's storied, but I like it. But I'll use that with my wife, family this weekend. But no, I think as I said, I think it's more typical. And so I think about myself, Kyle, as the coach that wasn't the best player, but makes a pretty good coach. When you think about professional sports, often the very best players, right, the superstars, the world-class players, they don't typically make great coaches, in part because I don't think they have a sense of what it takes for everybody else, to get to good, right? Because they're naturally great. They're the freaks. They're the superstars. I think of myself more as I'm a good entrepreneur. I've worked hard, obviously, and had some moments where luck went my way, and that's usually what is needed to get an exit or to get some sort of financial outcome. But I haven't had a 10 billion unicorn. So I think that makes me a better coach. And I do try to coach other entrepreneurs about the life they're embarking upon and sort of how to optimize it and have some success. So that's kind of how I think about myself. Maybe not storied, but certainly well practiced.
Okay. And during this career, and you talk about you're a good coach, maybe you weren't the best player, but what is your number one skill?
Yeah, two, looking around corners, which is both looking for upside and managing downside. I'm an Enneagram 6, Kyle. And so if you know the Enneagram, that's a personality sort of classification system. 6 is someone that is, glass half empty kind of guy. I do worry a lot about the downside. I do try to manage my anxieties by thinking through what are the downsides. So I think ahead and look for downsides, but I also maintain some ability to be a little delusional, a little too optimistic, and think about those upsides. So looking around corners, and I think seeing both the downside and seeing the potential upside I think I'll combine those into one superpower.
Okay. And it was Enneagram?
Enneagram. Yeah. Enneagram is a personality system, kind of, I'd say the next generation Myers-Briggs.
Okay.
And so Enneagram has 9 types. I'm not an expert. My wife is actually, but I'm an Enneagram 6. Some of your listeners may know what that means. What it means for me is I look around corners and I worry a lot. So that as an entrepreneur, I think that can be mostly a good thing.
Yeah, I like that. So I'll put links to this personality test. I love personality tests. So on Myers-Briggs and others. So yeah, check it out and we'll put a link to it so people can find out what number they are. Is there several numbers or just like how many?
1 through 9. Yeah. So there's lots of numbers. This test is sort of becoming the test in Silicon Valley. I think it appeals to Silicon Valley types. It's a complex test, lots of different inputs into it, 9 different types and different subtypes. It's complex, Kyle. But people seem to like it, and I've got value from it. Again, mostly coached by my wife, who does this for a living. So I would check it out.
Okay, I definitely will. So, in this career, this roller coaster career, at what point were you in your career when you found out you had cancer? And how did that change maybe the trajectory of your life or your career?
Oh, that was just 3 years ago.
Okay.
So it hasn't really impacted my career yet. I'll talk a little bit about that, though, in terms of how ventures can be all consuming. So as you noted, I got cancer, it was lung cancer. I got very lucky. I was diagnosed really early stage 1. It was actually picked up, Kyle, on a routine scan for basically my sort of calcium and artery annual scan that I was doing because my father had heart disease. So my doctor said, hey, we should scan for this, check out your heart. And so I was doing that, and that picked up the lung cancer. So I was really fortunate because it was so early. So I had that removed surgically, no chemo, no radiation, which was, again, fortunate. The doctor at the time, the surgeon at Stanford said, listen, you'll be out of here in a couple of days out of hospital, and you'll be, doing email, probably tomorrow after the surgery, and you'll be back at work kind of, as soon as you want. 2 weeks later, I was fundraising for Section. We had started the fundraise, and I put it on hold so I could get surgery. And after a couple of weeks, I felt pretty good. I was back at home, and I was pain meds were way down, and so I started setting those meetings with those VCs to raise our Series B, our next round of capital. And in hindsight, that was insane. I shouldn't, at my age, I should have known better. Having been on this roller coaster for as long as I have over the last 30 plus years, I should have known better because I got through it. The fundraise was not successful. The market at that point was deteriorating. Our sales, frankly, were deteriorating at Section because the pandemic was over, and a lot of that demand that we'd seen surge, in 2020 and 2021 was beginning to contract. So like Peloton and Zoom, and a lot of other companies that benefited from the pandemic, we had, and then we were seeing that business contraction. So the fundraise was not going to work. And it took me a few more weeks to find that out. And then, frankly, I sort of crashed. I had sort of just got completely exhausted and depleted around Christmas time. When I look back, I realized, what was I doing? Right after 2 weeks after lung cancer surgery, I was back, kind of on the road, on the virtual road. I was doing this all over Zoom, but fundraising is intense. It's hard. It's all about rejection and being resilient and kind of getting up the next day and doing a couple more pitches. And so I should not have been doing that. I should have known better. I should have either not canceled that fundraising. We didn't need the capital. We wanted the capital, but we didn't need it. So I probably should have taken a month or two, Kyle, and looked after myself better and my kind of mental health and emotional health after a surgery like that. But I didn't. It was, again, these startups in these moments can be all consuming. And I thought if we could get that capital, the business would be that much stronger in terms of our balance sheet. So yeah, don't do that. Get some distance, get some perspective. And in that moment, I didn't have it. I really didn't.
Well, it probably took your mind off of it as well a little bit.
It could have been that. Yeah, but it was certainly something for me to do. Yeah, and I do like these intense experiences that startups offer. I'm good in crisis. I tend to do well, so meaning I can handle them pretty well. It wasn't a crisis, but it's one of these moments where you got to be all in and really, really engaged to run a fundraising process. It typically takes anywhere from 1 to 3 months, and it's mostly 99 no's to get one yes. So yeah, these are moments where I do tend to perform better. So that's probably why I was, attracted to it, I guess, in terms of, throwing myself into it. But again, maybe not 2 weeks after coming out of hospital.
For sure. And so thank God you're cancer free right now. And you just have to go in every 6 months, every month, or how often do you have to go in?
Yeah. What's amazing, Kyle, now is that there are these technologies called blood biopsies. So in my case, my specific type of lung cancer, they've actually sequenced the DNA from the tumor. And there's a company that they draw blood every 6 months and can detect if that cancer DNA is recirculating in my system. So basically you can, non-invasively, it's a blood draw, get a quick read on is this cancer coming back? So I do that every 6 months. I do a scan every year, and I expect to be cancer free.
That's awesome. I don't know if I can ask this on a podcast, but how old are you, Greg?
I'm 63.
Which is amazing. You have so much energy. You're so into AI. You're teaching all these classes at Section. You're a CEO of a company. You're doing personal math with Taylor. You're also a founder.
Yeah, why slow down? I mean, first of all, I don't golf, or when I do, I suck at it. And frankly, I look around, I see some of my friends, I think they're retiring a little too early. We're all going to live longer. I think for some of us, if you can find a way to kind of find the off ramp and be happy and find ways to spend your time, that's great. I don't see that in the short term, not for me. So my goal, Kyle, is to keep working for at least 10 more years. Maybe not at this pace, maybe not as a startup CEO, with that level of kind of risk and responsibility and stress. But I would like to keep working for a good amount of time and create economic wealth for my family. So yeah, no slowing down. That's why I got into AI. The bottom line is, our cognitive abilities do decline. That starts at age 50. Our fluid or our processing cognitive abilities start to decline at age 50, and then they accelerate the decline after 60. So I'm in that zone, and so that awareness combined with when ChatGPT Plus came along, which was February the 1st, 2023 last year. I started playing around with that really more seriously. I was like, okay, this is going to be one way I keep working. These kinds of tools and technologies, AI, generative AI specifically, will be an edge for me, and that'll allow me to keep on my mental game. And I work in a place that's probably the most ageist work environment in the world, right? Silicon Valley. If you're not 28 in a hoodie, you're an idiot. So I just thought, this AI is going to be pretty cool for me. And that's been the case.
And so you mentioned ChatGPT. What other AI tools and workflows have you adopted then?
Yeah, my go-to are like others. I use 3: Perplexity for research and more that sort of Google replacement. Not that I've replaced Google with Perplexity completely by any means, but for what I call knowledge searches versus functional search. So functional search, I stick with Google. I keep using that obviously every day. But for my kind of knowledge search, I'll use Perplexity. And then for my everyday AI as thought partner, AI as kind of coworker, I'll bounce back and forth between GPT and Claude. I tend to prefer Claude, Anthropic's Claude Sonnet 3.5 is the actual model name. I prefer that AI for its kind of tone. I think it's better at sort of collaborating, especially around business topics. So I'll tend to use Claude for that kind of use case and GPT for everything else. For big questions or high stakes decisions, Kyle, I'll use both at the same time. So I've got both, browser tabs open, and I'll just take the same prompt and drop it in both and go back and forth and just see how each one will work with me on a specific challenge. And I think that's, it's a little bit extra effort, but not much. And I get usually value from both of them when I'm doing that because they're different, and they're going to work with me in a different way, give me different answers.
Yeah, I agree. And Perplexity is my go-to as well for knowledge search. And I've continued to pay for ChatGPT and Claude. So $60 a month for those 3. And it's like I'm bouncing back and forth as well. I find ChatGPT a little hypey when it generates content sometimes. It's a little more like too much over the top. I like the way Claude writes things better. But I wish Claude remembered our chats. And I wish Claude also had a voice mode.
You can see. I mean, OpenAI is a bigger company. They've got more engineers. They've got more researchers. They've got more of everybody, right? They're a much bigger company. They have about 86% market share. So you're really beginning to see the advantages of scale in that they are able to release more models faster. They obviously released O3 last Friday, the new reasoning model. So they're able to release more models, more features. They were first to mobile with an app and so on. So I think that, they're going to be hard to catch. My guess is Claude will either need even more cash. They already got a bunch just recently. They'll need to be bulked up even more in terms of resources. Anthropic will need to be, or you might see them having to focus and sort of narrow down the focus of Claude. So it's really good at less things. But in terms of the Swiss Army knife of AI, it seems to be GPT.
Yeah, I agree. And I keep telling people don't sleep on Google because Gemini, and I don't know if you're using Notebook LM or not, but I used it to do research on you for this podcast. It's like a custom GPT out of the box, off the shelf. And, I can throw all of your personal maths, all the writing you've done, your LinkedIn profile, everything, and it will even generate a podcast, basically an AI female and male voice. I listen to that. I write down research and questions that I want to ask you based on that. Hopefully there's not too many hallucinations. We'll find out as we go through a few more questions, but I just think Google's sitting on a gold mine with YouTube and all the data they've collected for years and years and all the sites they've indexed. I just think it seems like they could flip a switch and and just continue to come out with things. Notebook LM, I just heard about it on a TikTok, and now I'm like loving it.
It's pretty amazing. Notebook LM. I haven't used it that much, Kyle. I've done a couple of those, like, hey, give me a podcast out of this document, and it's mind blowing. So I'm waiting for Google too, but how long do we wait? Kind of, like, hey guys, you got all this money, all these advantages, all these engineers. You've got to bring it to market in a coherent way. And I think you got to GPT stands for AI in the mind of consumers. That's really what's happened. That's a hard thing to catch. But listen, more is better. These technologies are so powerful, and we want them. We want more than just one or two or three companies as dominant. Even half a dozen is probably not enough. So at this moment, I'm probably most concerned about the concentration of AI power in just a few companies, which means just a few executives. And if you think about, Zuckerberg's track record at Meta, not great in terms of managing the risks with social media. And so we just, how much can we trust Sam Altman or Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk, for that matter, to really manage these capabilities in a way that benefit all of us, not just shareholders? We'll see. But I think the less concentration, the better in terms of kind of AI leadership and ownership.
I agree. So, Greg, how much do you use voice mode with ChatGPT?
Yeah, quite a bit. I'll use it in the car a lot, or while walking or hiking. And I think about it as basically replacing some of my podcast time. So I've probably taken an hour a week or so of time I would have spent listening to podcasts and essentially having a conversation with GPT. And of course, it's a conversation you can steer, you can go in the direction you want, and at what level, kind of in terms of the topic you want to discuss. So yeah, I just think it's game changing. It will be game changing for learning, for sales training, all kinds of use cases. And as I said, just casually, just a great way to kind of learn and be informed. It's time efficient because you get to control the conversation because the AI is following your lead, at least for now.
Yeah. And I think people just don't understand the power of it. People need to buy the app. They need to put it on their phone and they need to have a conversation with AI. That's all. There's nothing to be afraid of. I think a lot of people are afraid of, my information is going to be out there, or they're going to use it to their own advantage and something like that. But I'll go on a walk with ChatGPT, have a conversation about my plans for next year. Here's the pillars I'm thinking about. The whole transcript is there when I'm finished. Plus, I'll always end the conversation with, hey, can you summarize what we talked about, and those kinds of things. And here's the bullet points. And I've got it all documented right there. And I just went on a 30-minute walk.
Listen, I think that we're in this moment where a lot of people are getting their education about AI from the media, which is just the worst place to get it because they're all either overhyping it, all the things that it can do, or it's scaring the shit out of us in terms of, it's coming for us, right? It's coming for our jobs. It's coming for what it means to be human. So I just think that a lot of people are understandably concerned. They are pragmatically concerned, things like data privacy, which I think they don't need to be as concerned as they are, but they're concerned about that. And also just this kind of existential concern around, what's this mean and how does it impact education and our kids? It's easy to be alarmed about AI, right? And it's easy to be, and I think one natural reaction is just to put your head in the sand or just sort of not really engage with it until you have to. And so I think that's a mistake. Obviously, I engaged early. And we pivoted sections so we would be the school for the age of AI, and so we could teach as many other people as we could as fast as we can. I'm disappointed at the pace we're going, meaning I want to train more people faster. We trained 15,000 people this year. I'd like to train 100,000 next year and 1 million the year after. I want to get as many people as we can into what I call the AI class, so that they're able to use these tools and really not be scared of them, be confident, learn how to integrate them into their workflows. So, we got work to do, but I think the media is not helping. And I think it's somewhat natural human reaction, which is, what is this stuff? It looks scary and unnatural. Therefore, I want to avoid it. Younger people not, right? I mean, the first AI native generation are now going to be entering our schools. Of course, our companies, rather, they're at school using AI. And of course, they're being accused of cheating when they're using AI at school. And then when they come interview in our companies, we're going to want them to be fully AI native. And in fact, we're going to want to hire those kids because they're going to be that much more productive and more fluent with these technologies. So I think we're all in for a little bit of awakening inside of companies and teams when we start to hire these kids out of college, because they're going to be 100% AI enabled. Because they are already, right? So it'll be different in terms of when they come to work and how they work, because they won't think twice about consulting or asking or working with AI. They don't think it's going to be cheating. They think it's going to be smart. I can't tell how many people, Kyle, tell me when I'm in person and doing these lectures or workshops with other leaders, the most common sort of concern I get is, well, am I cheating by using AI? Am I cutting corners by using AI? Am I going to be viewed not favorably by my boss or by my team because I've admitted I'm using AI? So again, it makes sense. We have these deeply held beliefs, cultural beliefs almost about work, that we create value by working, and that the ideas are our ideas, and that working hard, is a virtue. All those kinds of typical beliefs we've had about work, they get challenged by AI. That it doesn't have to be your idea. It could be the AI's idea, and maybe you made the idea better, or maybe it doesn't matter. You collaborated with your AI, and you got a good idea, and that's the one you want to propose and move forward with. Doesn't matter, where it came from necessarily. But again, these are big changes, sort of big cultural changes or kind of belief system changes. You're not cheating with AI. You're being smart by working with AI. So that's where I think the biggest challenges will be, that we have to learn how to use the technologies. So the kind of the technical skills or the prompting skills, just kind of the tactics of working with AI. We need to train people on that, but mostly we have to train them to think about it differently in terms of their own, the way they work, and that it's okay to consult an AI and get help from an AI.
So Gen Z, they're going to be growing up with this and, already using it. What's your advice for Gen Xers, I guess, Gen Xers and boomers regarding AI?
I mean, just follow my lead, get on it. It's what you said. Put GPT on your phone, and you don't even need a paid account anymore to get the best model. It's great. OpenAI makes GPT-4, which is their kind of the frontier model, which means the best current model. GPT-4, you get for free. You don't even have to pay for it. If you want the app and you want to get some other sort of features and no limit to your conversations, pay the $20 a month and get GPT Plus. But just start playing around. If you don't see a use case at work, start playing around at home. I just think that and I think that's kind of it's the Achilles heel of AI, Kyle. It can do so much. We've never had something like this before. We've always had software apps that do a few things really well, and we love them because they do a few things really well. Right? We love Google because it's great for search and so on. We love Uber because a car turns up and takes us somewhere, and now Waymo. So apps and software have worked in that way. They do one thing or a few things very well. AI is the opposite. It does almost anything, but not great. Right? So it hallucinates, and it's prone to mistakes, and it can be, the software is buggy, or these things are really early. And so I think for most people, it's a little confusing. Okay, it does all these different things, but doesn't do one thing really, really, really well. Not every time, right? It's an unreliable technology, but it's so capable. So I think that just kind of is a hard thing for people to wrap their heads around. Like, it does what? It codes, and it writes, and it creates images, and it makes songs, and it does, strategic plans, and helps, my kid with their homework, and it does bedtime stories. Like whatever, what's done that ever before, in terms of software that we have had in our lives, whether it be at home or at work. It's a new thing. So I think my advice is, bring it home at least, right? If you don't want to bring it to work, bring your AI home and start to do things like travel planning with your AI. Because travel planning to me is the obvious consumer use case where there's so much friction for the consumer. We've all done travel planning for a trip. We all know that it ends up with like 10 or 20, 30 browser tabs open for Expedia and Travelocity and TripAdvisor, and you're reading the reviews. You know what it's like. And really, when you play around with ChatGPT for that, you realize this is the future of how we're going to access our information. Something intelligent behind the scenes has looked at all the same information that are contained in those browser tabs that you opened, and from that can give you an answer in a really clean, crisp way where you don't have to open all those browser tabs and scroll and all that stuff, right? So the way I think about that, Kyle, is interface friction will not be tolerated in the future. I think it's one of the biggest outcomes of generative AI from the last couple of years, that when you play with generative AI, you realize the interface friction to our data, our content, our information is really being dropped by that chat kind of interface to an AI. And we're not going to tolerate opening up 10, 20, 30 browser tabs anymore. It's too painful. People are not going to do it. They're going to expect their AI to come back with the answer. And we're going to want the right answer. So we're not going to likely tolerate hallucinations as humans. And obviously AI needs to fix that over time. But I think that to me is the best home use case. So when I get resistance, I tell people, go home and start planning a trip and use GPT and tell me what you think.
So as far as AI goes, the fear that I have of it is us becoming maybe less human. I like to write. I like to generate ideas. And AI, like we've talked about, seems like a cheat to that. But there are other ways that, social media and being online and kind of living this second life online make us less human too. We're not present anymore. We're sitting across from each other at a dinner party and our phone's on the table, just always beckoning and waiting for us to answer it or whatever, right? So how can AI make us better humans and more human, and maybe with efficiencies give us more time to do human things?
Yeah, I think it's going to do both, Kyle. I think it's like you said, like social media, it brought us together in some ways and connected people that were unconnected in really meaningful ways, and it isolated us at the same time. And I have the same sort of expectations or optimism and fears for AI. It will create great benefit for humanity and have a whole bunch of unintended and unpleasant consequences. I don't want my kids falling in love with, sex chat bots or whatever. Like that doesn't sound very human to me. And doesn't sound like a very satisfying relationship. So I don't want that to happen. At the same time, most of the planet can't get access to a good therapist or a good coach or a good business advisor or a good mentor. And I think in those moments, or a good doctor for a second opinion or even a first opinion. So I think, in those moments, AI is going to do a lot of good for a lot of people. And I think that's just, it's two sides of the same coin. And how do we manage to a better outcome? That's going to be some combination of us as users, big tech, and their willingness to accept the responsibilities for these technologies. I understand, there's cause not to be optimistic about that. Big tech have shown what they're all about is obviously making money, and they've raised huge amounts of money to fund this AI experiment. And so, I think we're clear what they're going to do. They're not here. AI, the big tech companies, including OpenAI, I don't think they really care about solving healthcare or solving, fixing education or solving the climate crisis. They say they are. They say that, maybe that'll be an outcome of these technologies, and it might be. But I don't think they're going to drive that change. I think it's going to be entrepreneurs and people like us that use these technologies and try to solve those problems. But let's be clear. Big tech's here to make a shit ton of money. They see this as a huge wave of disruption and therefore spending by mostly enterprise, consumer spending as well in terms of, consumers paying for AI, but mostly who's going to pay the bill here is going to be companies. And so, yeah, big tech's excited about it, and they're all in because they see this as the next wave of basically IT spending, enterprise IT spending in the US and globally. And that'll be trillions of dollars. And it will probably need to be to pay back all the money that's going in to build these supercomputers and all that stuff. So, I think that we need some combination of government, hopefully regulation that's meaningful but not oppressive, some responsibility amongst the big tech providers, the AI providers, and then us, users and leaders of organizations that consume AI, inside of our workforces to try to manage to hopefully capture the upside. But we're going to get some downside, Kyle, and we'll end up with some people spending too much time inside talking to their AI coach or their AI girlfriend. Again, I hope my kids don't do that, but I also hope my kids use it when they need access to a mentor or to an advisor fast, and or a coach or someone like that. That's a great way to use AI.
I love the idea of even therapists for most of the world can't afford that. A lot of people don't have insurance to pay for therapy, things like that. So uses of AI in that way are fantastic. And of course, for entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, I mean, the sky's the limit. It's astronomical what AI can do for one solopreneur to help them run a business and launch a business. So,
yeah, totally. I think it buys us 25 to 50%, or extends us 25 to 50%, right? Or buys us that much time, or it's something like that. It's very meaningful. And that's why, not surprisingly, OpenAI's revenue in the early days meaning the last 2 or 3 years, where the company's very young in terms of generating revenue, but most of it came from SMB and consumers. Makes sense. We're the ones that need the edge. If you work in a big company, you're more risk averse, and you have a lot more resources, and you're told, don't play with fire, and AI looks like fire. But if you're an entrepreneur, you're a side hustler, you're trying to get your own business off the ground. Yeah, it makes sense. You're interested in finding new tools that help, and this thing came along, and it's $20 a month. Let's do it, right? So I'd say 3/4 of OpenAI's revenue has probably been from SMB and consumer. That will change in the next decade. So enterprise will end up paying the biggest part of the bill. But it makes sense to me that it is people like you and I using these tools, because we need the extra time back.
yeah, and it reminds me of the advent of sampling, samplers, and the rise of rap music and things like that, where individual people could lay down beats and record songs and blow up and make money and things like that. I mean, it's using technology to their advantage to do that kind of stuff, and entrepreneurs can do that. Gray, I wanted to talk about the podcast. My podcast is called Maker, Manager, Money. So the Paul Graham manifesto about makers versus managers. And my belief is that, you have to make something, then you have to manage it. You can't just make something and then it's going to sell itself, right? You have to manage the sales of it, the administration of it, the manufacturing of it. On the other side of making and managing, or makers and managers, is the money. That's where the money is. You have to make and manage, and then there's money. So throughout your career, I know you, as a CEO, obviously you're a manager and you're scheduled, every 15 minutes or whatever it is every day. But then some of your other pursuits, like personal math and machine and partners, are you more of a maker?
Yeah, listen, I think I'm a maker everywhere a little bit, never as much as I want, perhaps, although I'm not sure I have the best instincts around product. Part of my job is to hire better people at product than I am. But, we're at Section, we're building something called Prof AI, which is going to be an AI coach to teach people AI. So it's an app. It's built on top of both the Claude and GPT APIs. So we're using those two AIs to power Prof AI. And I'm sitting in product reviews every month with that team. I was on a review on Friday, and I had a bunch of feedback for the product in terms of where I thought it was a little too heavy, or a little too slow, or too text intensive. It wasn't fun enough. So the UI to me felt a little heavy, a little serious. So listen, I think we want to always be making in some way. We need to know what we're good at, I think, in terms of where we can make, or where we can help others who are making. So but I think we want to stay involved in the product. I think that that doesn't matter where you are in the organization. I think you've got to, as a leader, stay close to the product and influence it in some way. I do spend more of my time on distribution, so that getting that product to the right people and getting them to pay for it. But if my job was just managing, Kyle, without any making, I'd probably lose interest faster in what I was managing, if that makes sense. I like to have a hand in the making of it, even as the company and product matures, because the product's never done. And certainly these AI experiences are so unique and so new that I find that just fascinating. How will we use AI, and how will we create the AI in a way that will incent our users to use it, and use it a lot? Because that means they'll be that much more loyal, and they'll pay for it.
I agree. I love those answers. So,
but what I will say is, as an entrepreneur, I've learned to pay a lot more attention to the money, and specifically the plan. I'd say when you sort of unpack money, what you're really unpacking is what's the plan on both the revenue side, obviously, and the expense side. And it took me a while, maybe longer than it should have. But over the last 5, maybe 10 years of my career, I've become much more disciplined and much more relentlessly focused on the plan, the annual plan, the monthly plan, the weekly plan. Really, I take a lot more satisfaction than I ever used to and just hitting the plan each quarter, and just the discipline and the satisfaction of, it's great to exceed it, but don't miss it. As I said, on both sides, the revenue and the expense. So that's a big part of how to be a maker manager, is to deliver the plan.
Make a plan, manage the plan, deliver it.
Yeah, make a plan, manage the plan, deliver it. Yeah, sure, it changes, and you're going to miss it some days, but not by surprise. I think what I've learned is that management teams and boards, if you have a board, most of us don't have one, don't need one, but if you have venture capital or investor capital, you often have a board. Just manage the surprises. So there aren't many. Manage your plan to manage surprises, at least to the downside. Surprises to the upside are fine, but not too many surprises to the downside.
That's great advice. So I just want to wrap up with a few personal questions. I've got one question before that. What's the book that you recommend the most to people?
For entrepreneurs, I still recommend, it's probably 10 or 15 years old, The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz, the venture capitalist from A16. It's just a good, realistic view of the hard lessons and the things you're going to have to do if you want to try to build a company. So I think it's required reading for any entrepreneur.
I love it. So here's a lightning round of questions for you, Greg. What's your favorite candy bar?
Oh, Henry, but cold in the fridge.
Very unique answer. Never had that answer. I've interviewed 40 entrepreneurs, and I know it exists.
Have you heard? Maybe it's Canadian.
I've heard of O. Henry, yeah, but I'm going to try it now. I'm going to go try to find it.
All right, try to find it.
Yeah, I love it. Favorite musical artist?
Bruce Springsteen. I'm obviously aging myself, but my wife and I followed him a lot of places. Actually, this summer in Barcelona, which was amazing, and on Broadway and a bunch of places. Yeah, so it's Bruce. I think he's a great American hero for me, and a great songwriter. We should all listen to him or read him.
For sure. And are you originally from California, or are you from back east?
No, I'm from Canada. I was born in Toronto, outside Toronto, and I was raised in London, England, and then back to Canada. And then I met a guy in Toronto, in Canada, kind of a mentor of mine. He said, "Listen, what are you doing here? You want to be in technology? You're interested in this thing called the internet. You're going to meet." He said there's a grocery store in Palo Alto, Greg. It's called Molly Stone's. You go to Molly Stone's on Saturday morning to do your groceries. You're going to meet more people there in the store in tech than you're going to meet in a whole year in Canada. So get the hell out of Canada, get out of Toronto, and get to California. So I took that advice and came here and went to school here and then stayed.
The rest is history. That's great advice that you received. And so how did you pick up Bruce Springsteen then from being in Canada?
I mean, he's everywhere. He's global.
He seems very American, but
he's American. But Canada, we're your next door neighbors. We're just there. We're right across the border.
You're basically Americans. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
Exactly.
Favorite cereal?
My wife's homemade granola.
Mac or PC?
No, Mac. I worked at Apple just for about 9 months, I guess. Then I was fired. It was the only real job I was fired from was from Apple, but still love Apple, and Mac ever since.
Google or Microsoft?
Google.
Dogs or cats?
Dogs. But I have to say, I'm not a dog lover. My family are dog lovers, and I don't get cats.
Phantom or Les Mis?
Phantom.
Okay, last two questions, Greg. What's the worst thing about being an entrepreneur, and what's the best thing?
The worst thing is the sacrifices I think you will have to make along the way that are not necessarily known to you now, but they will obviously reveal themselves to you. It might be relationships, it might be family time, it might be health, anxiety, and so on. So it's a hard road at times, and it comes with a cost. And again, no specific solution there except kind of get through it. If the cost is too high, get out. So I do think a level of awareness there to know when to kind of pull back or dial it down. It matters a lot, but it doesn't matter that much. Kyle, once I was driving home. This is my last company, so this is probably 8 years ago now, something like that. I was driving home, and we had pivoted the business basically for one last time into this enterprise software kind of mobile communications app for companies. So I was driving home on Highway 280. If anybody knows the Bay Area, it's a beautiful highway coming south from the city. The office is in the city. I live down on the peninsula. I was driving home, and I said to myself, and I was usually the last to leave the office. The team back then was probably around 50 people. So I was driving home, and I said to myself, and I remember saying this to myself, if I lose my marriage, that's okay. I won't lose my kids. So I remember sort of intentionally saying to myself, okay, I think this pivot's going to work. I think I can turn this corner, and I think I can get this company, on a path to growth and eventually profitability. And in that moment, I was willing, because I knew here I was coming home, it's late night after late night, and this was going on for years. It was a real struggle. And I remember saying to myself, hey, if I lose my marriage, that might be an acceptable cost, but I won't lose a relationship with the kids, right? That's nuts. That's nuts. I even thought that. It didn't happen, but I was prepared to, at least in that moment, at least I thought I was prepared to make that sacrifice. That's how much I cared about the company and the business. And my kind of role, maybe even a little bit my legacy. So, don't do that. That's a moment where you got to kind of step back and get some perspective. I didn't have it in that moment. What's great about being an entrepreneur is you get to create things that don't exist. And I think that is a way of making a small impression or mark on our world, is that you get to bring to market or open a store, whatever it is, product, a new service that didn't exist before. And I think there's something just empowering about that and liberating, and hopefully you can do it profitably and make a living and create some economic security as well. So I just love the idea of I like to build things that don't exist.
I love that answer. So Greg, thanks so much for being generous with your time. I know I've looked forward to this conversation for over a year. I know we've had to reschedule a few times. Thank you for your patience and thank you for being generous with your time. I've loved attending courses on Section School with you as the instructor. I love Section's focus on AI and even free webinars and things like that, talking about the moral issues surrounding AI, all kinds of different topics. So I can't recommend enough Section School. We'll put links in the show notes. We'll put links to Machine and Partners. We'll put links to Personal Math so they can check out your newsletter as well. Thank you again for being here, and I've just really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, me too, Kyle. Thank you. And next time we talk, I want to hear about those two guitars that are behind you on the wall. So we'll do that next time. It was really great to spend time with you. I appreciate it.